In this video, we're going to take a look at importing and placing images, organizing your images, merging, drag and dropping from the operating system, which is new to Photoshop CS5. So to begin, I've got two images open, and I'm going to go to my Arrange Documents menu. I'll choose two up so I can see them both side by side, and I'll hit Command 0 or Control 0, also Command minus or Control minus to zoom out to see this one. Now you can see I'm at a zoom of 33.3%. I'm going to choose from my Window menu, Arrange, Match All to match the zoom and location so I can see them both side by side. Now on this sign image, you'll notice I added a new layer, color correcting, to more closely match the magenta or pinkish hue that's in this image. And what I'd like to do is select this sign and move it over to look like it was taken in this photo. A little power user trick. I've already built a layer mask selecting the sign, so I'll hold down my Command key on the Mac or Control key on Windows, and it turns it into a selection. If I were just on a selection tool and I drag that over, you'd see only the marching ants moved. So I'll deselect. Instead, I'll make sure I'm on the Move tool, and if I drag and drop, you'll see a pair of scissors on my cursor to indicate I'm moving the entire object, and it brought over layer 1. Now, if I thought I might need to do some cleanup work, I'll undo that. I could come over, deselect, and drag and drop the entire sign layer, preserving the layer mask and the background of the image. So now you could see I've got the sign placed. I'm ready to scale it down, so I'll use Edit, Free Transform, Control-T or Command-T, and I'm holding down my Shift key to make sure that as I scale it, it's proportional. I'll press Return or Enter to accept it, and now I'm going to view just this document. You'll notice when I took this photo, if I zoom in with Command plus or hold down my spacebar to click and drag the screen, you can see a little bit of our car in here. So I'll temporarily hide the sign layer, and I'll hit J to jump to the Patch tool. Normally you would be on the Spot Healing Brush tool, but I've left it on the Patch tool, and I'm going to select the piece of the car that I'd like to remove and pick it up. Oops. I'll click OK. Make sure I'm on my background layer, because if I'm still on the sign layer, there's nothing for it to grab, and the layer's hidden. Now that I'm on background, I'll get in the middle of the selection I made with the Patch tool and drag it to an area that looks similar. When I let go, it does a little blending. I may need to try again and again, but never worry. Photoshop has a brand new feature, Edit, Fill, and I'll use Content Aware and see how Photoshop does at determining what it should fill with. That couldn't have been easier. So I'm going to fit in Window, and now I'm ready to show my sign layer, and there's my finished piece. Now I'm doing a Save As. I'll go to my desktop, into my classwork folder, and I'll add Costa Rica, KFM, and I'll put the word sign in there so I know that I've worked on it. I hit Save, I'll close the next one, and this one I don't need to save. I only used the layer mask. I don't want to keep any edits that I've done. So now I'll hit Mini Bridge, and I'm ready to go to this gorgeous shot I took on the beach. The same day, I was at a different spot on the beach, and I took a picture of a fisherman. And what I'd like to do is make it look like the fisherman belongs in this photo. Now I'm ready to pull my fisherman image into this. And to do that, I'm going to grab it from my operating system. So I'll move to the edge of my window. A note for the Macintosh users, you do need to have on Window, Application Frame in order to do this. Or you can have an image open and still drag in, but you won't see the gray background of your panels when you click on the desktop. Let me hide everything else, and I'll double-click on my class files. I'll hit F and go down until I find Fisherman, and this works the same on Windows and Mac. As long as you could see an image open in Photoshop, all I need to do is click and drag, and then drop on the image where I'd like to leave it. Perfect. Now I can stretch Photoshop back out, just getting to the very edge of the window and expanding it. Perfect. And this fisherman, I'm going to move into place over on the right side of the image and press Return or Enter. I'll hit the letter V to jump to my Move tool, and you'll notice the layer opacity is 100%. I'm going to hit 4 for 40% to see where I'd like to place this guy. Now you'll notice when I placed it, this icon in the Layers panel indicates it's a smart object. And smart objects were added to Photoshop CS2. What that means is if I scale the fisherman up or down, it's always retaining the original resolution of the image, so I can make better adjustments, especially if I scale him down and then scale him back up again. If he wasn't a smart object and I scaled him down and back up again, I would lose detail. It would get fuzzy or out of focus because Photoshop has to make up new pixels. With a smart object, it's always using my higher resolution placed version of this file. So bringing the fisherman in through drag and drop from your operating system is exactly the same as doing File, Place, and we'll do that next. But now I'm ready to make a selection of the fisherman. So I'll hit 0 for 100% opacity. I zoomed in with Command Spacebar or Control Spacebar and use my Spacebar key to move my screen. Now I'll use the Quick Selection tool to select the fisherman. I'll hit my left bracket key on my keyboard to make the brush size smaller, and I'll simply use the tool as intended, making it very quick. I'm going to include some of his shadow, so I'll hold down Spacebar to temporarily switch to my hand tool and click and drag up. And it's okay that I'm getting some extra in here. I'm going to use the new power of Refine Edge. Refine Edge is not a new tool, but it's gotten far more powerful to clean up this selection. So I want to make sure I get a little bit of his net in here. I'm holding down Option or Alt to take away from the selection. And I'm hitting Undo when I go a little too far. So now I'll click Refine Edge. And Refine Edge has a phenomenal feature to decontaminate colors, which attempts to remove a very different color edge from where I was working before. And we've had Radius in Refine Edge for a while. As I dial it up, it's blending it into the background. But if I hit Smart Radius, it actually attempts to keep more of the solidity along the edge. So I can view the marching ants and see the selection with the original image. I can view an overlay like a quick mask. I can view on a black background or white background, or simply the alpha channel or layer mask that will be created, or on a layer. And it looks pretty good on a layer. That's what it will look like underneath. So I'm going to go back to Reveal Layer and take a look at the radius. If I show the radius, there's the blending edge. And as I dial it up or down, that's what it's attempting to use to blend this into the background. I'll turn off Show Radius, and I could turn on and off Show Original. But at this view, I won't see the original because I've already clipped it away. And I'm going to put this on a new layer with Layer Mask. That's new to Photoshop CS5. So I'll hit OK. I can trash my original fisherman layer because I'm happy with this. And if I want to tune up my layer mask, I can click on the layer mask, hit B for my brush tool, hit X to swap my colors because black blocks and erase any little portions that I don't want included. Then I hit Fit in Window to see the final result, and I'm very happy with this. Now I'm ready to bring in some Illustrator files. So let me do a Save As on this and put it in my classwork folder and add my initials. I'll close it up with Command W or Control W. I'll come over to Mini Bridge and I'll grab my next photo. As I scroll down a bit, I want to make a little bit of an ad on this Tesla image. Now I should say in advance, Photoshop is not the proper application for building print-based ads. If I was going to be adding type and vector graphics, ideally that would be done in Adobe InDesign, or for single-page ads, often people use Illustrator. However, some people stick with the tool they know best and will do everything in Photoshop. In Photoshop, white space is still pixels, so it can create some very large files. I will tell you also, if you do decide to create an ad in Photoshop and you use type and it's going to be placed into InDesign for print output, then you want to save it as a Photoshop .pdf. That preserves the type as a vector, so it doesn't get rasterized at 300 pixels per inch and look jagged. That's often a complaint of customers because they put it in the wrong file format. If you leave it as PSD, that type will be rasterized. EPS and Photoshop PDF preserve type as vectors, but the EPS structure does not support transparency, which means soft feather drop shadows and a lot of effects that you may decide to use in an ad. Now, if you're a web designer, you can ignore all of that, because web designers can do whatever they'd like. However, your type and vector objects will often look sharper if you do your web ads in Illustrator. That would be my application of choice. But I'm going to start by placing an Illustrator file. So I'll switch to my Move tool, and I'll choose File Place. I could have dragged and dropped from the operating system. I'll look by name and go to the desktop and into my class files, and there's my native AI. I could also place a generic EPS, which is what most people used to use when Quark Express was the standard print page layout program. Today, most people are standardized on Adobe InDesign. Therefore, .ai, .psd, and .pdf, .ai being the native Illustrator, .psd being the native Photoshop, and .pdf being the Acrobat or portable document format, are preferred because they all support transparency. So I'm just going to place these circles here, and when I press Return or Enter to accept it, you'll notice again the Smart Object icon, indicating although the image is embedded and not required to be sent separately, if you send this job to a print shop, it can still be edited by Adobe Illustrator, and we will be doing that. So on the Move tool, I want to make another copy of these circles, so I'll hold down Option or Alt as I drag, and if I let go of the mouse first, it makes a copy. I'll choose Edit, Free Transform, and I'll flip these to the opposite direction. And I'll use Shift and scale them up a bit. I'll press Return or Enter. Now we've gotten the proof back from the client, and they've asked that I make these a different color. There's a little too much orange going in to this image for them. So I can simply double-click on the Smart Object icon. Photoshop lets me know after I make my edits, just choose File, Save, and it will commit to those edits. I'll click OK. It's telling me that it's been modified outside of Illustrator. That's because I placed it in Photoshop. I'm going to discard the changes and just work on the original file, and it will still work beautifully. So I'll select all, and I'll choose Edit, Edit Colors, Recolor Artwork. And with Recolor Artwork, I'm going to hit Edit and try a completely different spot on the color wheel. So I will link my harmony colors, and as I pull any one color, they all go to a different spot on the color wheel. I could make them lighter by dragging in towards the center of the color wheel, or darker by dragging out. And I can drag individual shades. I think I like that. I'll click OK, choose File, Save. I'm going to click OK. This was originated in an earlier version of Illustrator, so it warned me about legacy or older files, which is fine. I'll close this up. I hit Command-Tab on the Mac to come back to Photoshop, or Alt-Tab on the PC, and you'll notice they all updated. It referenced, even though there's two layers, I could name this Circles Top and Circles Bottom. And they both updated, which is exactly what I wanted. I'm also going to set them to 80% opacity. So I simply click on each layer. Since I'm on the Move tool, I hit the number 8. Now there's one more image I'd like to put in this. So I'm going to come back to Illustrator, and I'll choose File, Open, or I could use Adobe Bridge and simply double-click on an AI file to open it. The next way to get images into Photoshop from Illustrator is through Edit Copy. And when I copy, I'll come back over to Photoshop, Edit, Paste. And when I paste, I have 4 options. Paste as a smart object is always my preferred method. However, if I'd like to run filters on it, I may want to take it from a vector or scalable object that maintains its paths for editing in Illustrator, which a smart object does, to pixels, so I can run filters on it in Photoshop. Or I can make it a path that has no fill, as if I drew it from scratch with the pen tool. Finally, I could make it a shape layer in Photoshop, again as if I drew it with the pen tool here, but it will have a solid fill color. I'm going to leave it on Smart Object to preserve the Illustrator editability. And when I click OK, I can drag and drop that to the upper right corner. I'm using Shift to scale it up, and anything that's a Smart Object will never lose its scalability. And to finish this off, I'll move that up, and I'll call this Cat. And I'll add a drop shadow by hitting FX at the bottom and choosing drop shadow. Scoot it over and down a little bit. Click on the size and give it a little bit more blur by hitting my up arrow key. And I can very easily hold down Option or Alt and drag that to the other two layers. Now they all have the same drop shadow. Those are the many different ways to bring images in to Photoshop. File Place, drag and drop from your operating system. You could drag and drop from Adobe Bridge, or you can copy and paste. I hope you give these a try.